Hello my friends, I am sorry for the delay. We had some work commitments and so it took a little bit longer. But here we are. Welcome to Kardec Radio. Today we will be speaking about mediumship. Mediumship, which is really at the heart of Spiritism. We meet every Monday afternoon at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So welcome all, and let us just dive right in, shall we? So mediumship is the subject matter. Of course, what we're presenting here is by no means the whole picture. We're just giving pointers and hoping that you will, in your spare time, perhaps read up on it a little bit deeper. We have the Medium's book by Allan Kardec, which gives us so much information on mediumship, from all the different manifestations of mediumship to pitfalls of mediumship and so on. A very detailed book. And today we will be using Spiritism 101 by Louis Hu, and we will supplement the information with sections from the Medium's book. So let us begin. Mediumship is a faculty that enables communication of people with spirits. This faculty present in thousands of people, regardless of religion, social class, level of education or morals. So we find mediumship everywhere. Mediumship is divided into two major groups: those who produce physical effects and those who produce intellectual effects. When we go to Wikipedia and we look at the definition of mediumship, we hear the following. Mediumship is the practice of certain people known as mediums to purposely mediate communication between spirits to the dead and living human beings. There are different types of mediumship, including spirit channeling. Humans have been fascinated with contacting the dead since the beginning of human existence. You will notice that the word dead comes up. You notice that Wikipedia really touches only on the mechanisms, but we'll see there's more to it. Let's see what else we can find out. When we go to Evolution in Two Worlds by André Louis, psychographed by Chico Xavier and Valdo Vieira, we find mediumship is an attribute of human beings which is used to communicate with spirits. You see the difference? We call it spirits. Then when we go to Missionaries of the Light by André Louis as well, also psychographed by Chico Xavier, we find the following. Mediumship is a means of communication, and Jesus himself tells us, "I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture." We know that medium was one of the most magnificent mediums. Jesus was one of the most magnificent mediums. And he's telling us that we will find pasture when we go through Jesus and using him as a door. When we look at the mechanisms of mediumship, we find that the spirit who wishes to communicate links its own perispirit with that of the medium, so as to influence the medium to reproduce its thought by speaking or writing. So this is important information. We're learning that the connection happens from perispirit to perispirit. From the perispirit of the incarnates, actually the other way around, from the perispirit of the spirits to the perispirit of the incarnates. And this connection is always connected or based on affinity. Mediumship is an opportunity of service, a blessing from God that makes it possible to maintain contact with the spiritual life. So you see, in contrast to Wikipedia, we're seeing that it's not just a mechanism, it is actually a form of service. Let us say hi to some friends. I see Honey Jones here. Blessings. Thank you so much for joining. I know there's other people and I can't see right now, but if I don't mention you, please feel warmly welcomed. Again, when we go back to Missionaries of the Light by André Louis, we find without Christ, mediumship is simply a means of communication and nothing more. A mere possibility of information like so many others, which can be possessed just as easily by those interested in causing trouble, thereby increasing the number of unfortunate captives. So without Jesus, we have nothing, it's just like another mechanism of communication. And it is through Jesus that we find the service, the love. It's through Jesus that we find the beautiful information that we get through mediumship. And in a minute, we'll see a little bit more of what we learn through mediumship. What are the mechanisms of communication, of spirit communication? Let us see. The medianimic interchange is a result of a perception occurring beyond matter, followed by an attunement where emotions and ideas of the discarnate are captured by the incarnate based on affinity. Again, it is through affinity that our perispirit connects to the spirit's perispirit and the messages come through, and vice versa. And now let us see what the purposes of mediumship are. Hi Marilda, yes, Marilda Vega and Angela Fantini, and I think there was somebody else, Raza Villasini. Thank you so much for joining. I have bifocals, so I have to look up in order to read. I apologize. So, what are the purposes of mediumship? First, there is self-illumination. We receive messages that help us, that illuminate us, that gives us information that will help us through our lives and help others too when we pass them on. Then there is humankind's progress. Those messages help us to progress. Then there is developing virtues. We get pointers towards becoming a better person, for example. Following the virtues, becoming more charitable, benevolent, indulgent, forgiving. Those are often messages that we receive from good spirits. Then there is helping others in both planes, and that we often do through disobsession. We have in most spiritist centers the rescue work, where mediums connect themselves through their perispirit to spirits that are suffering. And so we're of service in that form as well. The mediumistic practice, according to the interpretation of Spiritism, has at its objective to receive advice from the enlightened spirits, to help those people imprisoned in the meshes of vices and passions, and not just people as we just learned, but also spirits. Another objective is to develop and increase knowledge and understanding of who we are. What is our origin and our destination? We know that the Spirits book consists of 1,019 questions that Allan Kardec asked the good spirits. And he cataloged all the answers. And thanks to those answers, all of the above mentioned benefits we receive through mediumship are part of that book. Guidance, understanding. We learn where we came from, why we're here, where we're going. We learn about charity. We learn about the virtues. All in all, just how we can become better people, better servants of Jesus. what we also learn is another objective of mediumship is to maintain friendly and loving relationships with the departed and loved ones. We can communicate with family members, with friends, and receive information and pass on information as well. Another aspect of staying connected thanks to mediumship. Hi, Melissa Darlene. So what are the levels of spirit communication? The first one is the subliminal. It functions without an apparent manifestation. What we also learned through Spiritism is that actually we're all mediums. It is nothing super special. But most of us are subliminal mediums. That means we receive spirit messages, but there is not necessarily an outward manifestation. But then there is the second kind, the so-called ostensible mediums. Evident to the medium who can either be conscious, semi-conscious, or unconscious during the manifestation. So as a medium, those are manifestations that are visible to the outside world. And the medium can be conscious, semi-conscious, or unconscious during those connections. In Missionaries of the Light by André Louise again, we find the following. Do not foster the premature development of your psychic faculties. To see without understanding or to hear without discerning can cause considerable disasters to the heart. Seek above all, and here it is, seek above all to progress in virtue and to perfect your sentiments. Enhance your self-balance, and the Lord will open up to you the door of new knowledge. Isn't that beautiful? It puts us on the right path. It tells us that our inner transformation is number one. And out of our inner transformation, of course, we connect to higher level spirits and receive kind, loving, benevolent messages that will help us in our lives. Now let us go back to Louis Hu, Spiritism 101, and let us look a little bit deeper on mediumship of physical effects. Those are people who are more especially able to receive and transmit intelligent communication. So we knew that already. If we go now to the Medium's book on page 244, for all those of you who would like to follow along, page 244 is part of chapter 16, and we go to the sub-chapter Synoptic Table of the Different Varieties. And here we read, we may divide mediums into two large categories. The physical effects mediums, those who have the power to induce physical effects or ostensive manifestations. And secondly, the intellectual effects mediums, those who are more especially able to receive and transmit intelligent communications. So first now, we focus on the physical effects mediums. Mediums with this faculty are used by the spirits to provoke various physical movements, such as carrying objects, manipulating perfumes, making wraps, lifting tables, including making spirits visible. They may even perform healings and surgeries. These mediums are very rare nowadays. A lot of information. So it is linked, this type of mediumship is linked to actually moving things to the naked eye. Things are moving, people are being, spirits are being manifested, and odors are being emitted, and also healings take place. There is the so-called healing medium. Those are the ones who have the power to heal or relieve the pain of patients. Those are mediums who connect with healing doctors from perispirit to perispirit. And there was fulfill healings, create healings in people. And then there is the levitation of a table. That happens sometimes, particularly in the past, more in the past than today, as we just heard. That kind of mediumship is more rare today in mediumistic meetings. So levitation of a table is another form of a physical effects mediumship. And to learn a little bit more about levitation, we go to the Medium's book, page 105, item 9. So Medium's book, 105. Let us see that we can find it here. 105, item 9. Do spirits lift tables using their arms, which have become solidified somehow? It will help us to understand the lifting of table a little bit. The answer to that question will not yet tell you what you want to know, the spirits answer. When a table moves underneath your hands, it is because the spirit who has been evoked has taken enough of the universal fluid to infuse the table with artificial life. So it happens through the universal fluid. Having prepared the table in this way, the spirit attracts it and moves it under the influence of its own fluid, which it emits by exerting its own will. So our will is engaged, our own fluid, and the universal fluid. So it's a fluidic creation. When the object that it wants to move is too heavy for it, meaning the spirit, it asks for help of other spirits who possess similar characteristics. Because of its ethereal nature, the spirit in and of itself cannot act upon dense matter without some kind of intermediary. We know that, correct? We know that spirits can't directly put impact on dense matter. That is, without the link that connects it to matter. So only through a link can a spirit connect itself to matter and make it move. That is, without the link that connects it to matter. This link is what you call the perispirit, and it provides the key to all physical spirit phenomena. I believe I have explained the matter clearly enough to have made myself understood, the spirit says. So again, it is, the link happens from perispirit to perispirit. I hope that helps a little bit. Then we move on to item 11. Are all spirits able to produce phenomena of this kind? The spirits who produce them are always of a less evolved nature that is not yet entirely free of material influences. Interesting. So here the spirits teach us that actually those kind of manifestations are not necessarily from higher level spirits. It is more the spirits of a more frivolous nature. Because the higher level spirits don't have a need for those kind of manifestations. Moving tables and having tables levitate is not necessarily anything that they want to concern themselves with. Let's see, there is also Sylvia Beltran. Hello, blessings to you. And Andre Filippo, welcome friends. Welcome, thanks for joining us. And then we go to item 15, same chapter. It's actually chapter 4 if you like to look. Item 15 you find on page 107 in the Medium's book. It's part of chapter 4. Can a spirit act without resorting to a medium? So in other words, can a spirit have direct impact on matter? And the answer is, it can act without the medium being aware of it. In other words, many persons help spirits to produce certain phenomena without even suspecting it. These persons are like fountains from which spirits draw the animal fluid they need. So spirits can draw animal fluid from mediums. Consequently, the conscious participation of a medium, as you know, is not always necessary, especially with spontaneous phenomena. So there are mediums who can actually exude those, I think you call it ectoplasm, to help with these phenomena. And these mediums can be conscious of it or not conscious of it. Some mediums have this faculty to create it. Chico Xavier was one of them. He materialized a spirit once in Uberaba in 1965. Then we move on to page 122 in the Spirits book, just to understand the phenomena a little bit better. And we go to item 90, which is part of chapter 5. Highly evolved spirits, like serious and responsible human individuals, do not enjoy themselves by causing an uproar. It is mainly frivolous spirits rather than evil spirits that indulge themselves with those activities. So again, it is not necessary to have these physical manifestations. And as a matter of fact, it tends to be more the lower level spirits than the higher level spirits. Let us see, there is a message from Raza. So true, I have noticed that someone delivers a message for me without knowing that the Lord has used them to deliver the message. Exactly. Thank you for sharing. And Andre says something in Portuguese, and I'm sorry, I'm one of those rare people who don't understand enough Portuguese to be able to understand your message. Thank you anyway. I'm sure everyone else will understand. And if you like, you are able to translate it into English, I'm happy to read it. Thank you. So the second one is the apparition. Actually, that's the third one. So to move back a little bit. So we're right now talking about mediumship of physical effects. And under the mediumship of physical effects we mentioned the healing mediums, we mentioned the levitation, and now we're talking about apparitions. Apparitions are materializations of the spirit. Apparition is the picture here is a materialization of the spirit Katie King. You might have heard of her, next to the researcher Sir William Crookes. So also, as I said, Chico Xavier was able to have an apparition of a spirit, and it was through the ectoplasm coming out of the medium's mouth. And the medium was Antonio Alves Feitosa, that formed the apparition of Sister Josefa. So when we look at the Medium's book, page 131, item 96. So it's the Medium's book, page 131. We'll learn a little bit more about apparition. So 131, the Medium's book is really fantastic in learning all the different aspects of mediumship. We find in chapter 5 a subchapter that's called the phenomena of apportation, number 96. This phenomena only differs from those we dealt with above because of the benevolent intention of the spirit who produces it, by the almost always pleasing nature of the objects, and by the gentle and often delicate manner by which they are carried. So apparition is related to people. Apportation is things like roses or flowers of sorts, perfumes. This phenomena consists in the spontaneous bringing of objects that were not in the meeting place a few moments previously. They are usually flowers, but sometimes fruit, candy, and jewelry. So it is along the same lines, it happens in the same mechanism as apparitions, but these are apportations. So page 143. So these are all examples of physical effects mediums, which today we rarely experience. So page 143 in the Medium's book, which is part of chapter 6, visual manifestations, and there's a lot more information that we can find, we see item 100. Of all spirit manifestations, the most interesting are undoubtedly those in which spirits can render themselves visible. And under those we also find when flowers, perfumes, candies, fruit appear all of a sudden. On page 245, because we don't have time, this goes past the scope of our little gathering here, I would like to just mention the list of all the different physical effects that exist. So this is part of chapter 16 in the Medium's book on page 245. I'm sorry we're jumping around a little bit. I just wanted to flesh out what Louis Hu offers us in Spiritism 101 with some little items from the Medium's book, and then now give you just an overview of all the different physical effects, mediumship types that exist. So there is the tiptological mediums, those through whose influence noises and raps are produced. And then there is the motor mediums, those who induce inert objects to move. And then there's the mediums for displacements and suspensions, which are those who induce the displacement of inert objects. Then we have the musical effects mediums, those who induce the playing of musical instruments without contact to the instrument. Then we have the mediums for apparitions, which are those who induce fluidic or tangible apparitions. We just talked about them. Then there are the mediums for apportations, which we also just mentioned, which are those who serve spirits for the carrying of physical objects. Then we have the nocturnal mediums, those who obtain certain physical effects in darkness. Then we have the pneumatographical mediums, who are those who obtain direct writings. Then we have the healing mediums, we too mentioned them a little bit earlier, which are those who have the ability to cure or alleviate illnesses. Then we have the developer mediums, those who have the ability to develop the writing faculty in others. And then we have the next one would be the special intellectual effects mediums, and that is what we are going to talk about right now. So to wrap up, you can see there is a whole long list of physical effects mediums. There are those who are induced by good spirits, but often when it comes to the more mundane actions like table turning and also levitation of table is not necessarily comes from higher level spirits. It sometimes comes from frivolous spirits. So we see the long list of physical effects mediums. We have the ability to resort to the Medium's book and educate ourselves more, which I recommend. And we also know that all connections in mediumship happens from perispirit to perispirit, and it's based on the affinity of the spirit to us incarnates. And now number two, the big number two, is the mediumship of intellectual effects mediums, and that is much more apparent, much more widespread in today's world. Oh, Sylvia Beltran is saying he's doing the gospel at home now. Okay, thank you so much, Sylvia. Thank you for joining, though. It was nice having you, Andre. Thank you for saying that. So, the intellectual effects mediumship. Those are mediums with this faculty. Mediums with this faculty are those who receive intelligent communications from spirits. They can be speakers, psychographers, hearing mediums, painters, and so forth. With this mediumship, one can learn more about the spiritual world. One of them, which is the most common, is the writing mediumship. They're also called psychographers, and we know them through Chico Xavier, we know them through Divaldo Franco, and many others. So psychographers are the most common form of intellectual effects mediumship. It is also the simplest, the most convenient, and especially the most complete. The next one is the psychophony. Through psychophony or trance, spirits can communicate using the incarnate's vocal organs to deliver an audible message to all those present. We've met, most of us, probably all of us, are familiar with that. Then we have the painter mediums, who perform paintings of the most celebrated artists with amazing speed and with the painter's style. And then we have the mediums of psychography again, who have the ability to write while under the influence of spirits. If we go back to this medium's book, to the same chapter that we just looked at, namely chapter 16, we find after the physical effects mediumship list, now the special intellectual effects mediumship list. And let us for a moment look at all the different types of intellectual effects mediumship. There is the hearing mediums, those who hear spirits. I think many of us are familiar with that, have even experienced it. There is the speaking mediums, those who speak under the influence of spirits. It's a very common phenomenon. Then there are the seeing mediums, those who see spirits while awake. Then we have the inspirational mediums, those who receive thoughts suggested by spirits, usually without being aware of it. We're familiar with that too, I'm sure. Then we have the prescient mediums, those who in certain circumstances have a vague intuition of future common occurrences. Then we have the prophetic mediums, a variety of inspirational or prescient mediums who receive with God's permission and with greater precision than prescient mediums a revelation of future events of general interest. Sorry, I think we had an interruption. I'm back. So we said the prophetic mediums. They bring information of prophetic nature. Then we have the somnambulistic mediums, those who are assisted by spirits while in a somnambulistic trance, like a sleeping trance. Then we have the ecstatic mediums, those who receive revelations from spirits while in a state of ecstasy. We have the painting or drawing mediums, those who paint to draw under the influence of spirits. And lastly, we have the musical mediums, those who compose or perform music under the influence of spirits. And then after that, Allan Kardec explains every single phenomena, every single different type of mediumship at length. We find it in the Medium's book. When we now go to page 279, and just for a moment, I would like to touch on a few pitfalls or dangers of mediumship. 279 in the Spirit's book, if you like to go along with it, is Problems and Dangers of Mediumship. Another very interesting and important chapter, very educational, helping us to understand where to be cautious and what may happen, some of the dangers we could avoid if we read it. So if we go to item 221, which happens to be the first item, it's the question that Allan Kardec asked is the mediumistic faculty an indication of some pathological state or simply an abnormal one? Some people might think that, and maybe more people outside of Spiritism than those of us who are familiar with the Spirit teachings that we're blessed with by Allan Kardec and the good spirits who gave us this information. So is the mediumistic faculty perhaps a sign of abnormality? And the answer is sometimes abnormal, but not pathological. There are vigorously healthy mediums, unwell ones are so for other reasons. So there are unwell people, of course, and we know that, but that's not necessarily because they're mediums. So it happens, but most of them are actually physically healthy. Can exercising the mediumistic faculty cause fatigue? Ellen Kardec then asks. And the spirits say, the prolonged exercise of any faculty produces fatigue. So like anything else, if we go to the gym and we push weights or we do cardiovascular exercise, we tire too. That is the tiredness of the body. And through mediumship, we can also physically feel tired, but we can also feel emotionally tired. It depends. But so yes, we can feel fatigue like in any other activity. And then number 3, apart from cases of abuse, can exercising mediumship in any of itself cause health problems? So can mediumship cause health problems? The answer is, there are times when it is prudent and even necessary to abstain from, or at least moderate, the use of mediumship. It depends on the physical and mental state of the mediums, who usually become aware of it. When the medium begins to feel fatigued, it is time to stop. Can mediumship produce insanity? Wow, let's see. No more than anything else, the spirits tell us. No more than anything else could, when mental weakness predisposes one to it. Mediumship will not produce insanity where the germ of insanity does not already exist. So that teaches us no. It can trigger it if the insanity is already in that person, but otherwise no. So we're safe there. Could developing mediumship in children cause problems? Now, for all of those of us who are parents and we suspect that our children are mediums, it might be a very interesting question and answer. Certainly. And sustaining it could also be very dangerous because such fragile and delicate organisms excuse me, would be very disturbed and their infantile imaginations too overexcited. So the message is, we need to be cautious with children. I apologize. So in wrapping up, In wrapping up, I would like to say what we find in Missionaries of the Light by André Louis, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Without Christ, mediumship is simply a means of communication and nothing more. Mediumship is an opportunity of service, a blessing from God that makes it possible to maintain contact with the life of spirits. So in closing, let us keep in mind that mediumship too is a blessing. It's a gift from God. And to use it responsibly. It is important for us to keep working on our inner transformation so that as we become better people, more complete, when our germs that reside in us, our germs of perfection, start blossoming, that through this moment of our transformation, we can attract more helpful and higher level spirits. And that when we use mediumship, that we do it in connection with God, with Jesus, that we ask for support so that the messages we receive will only be to the benefit of everyone concerned. Helpful, healing, supportive, both for incarnates as well as discarnates. And on this note, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me today, for joining us today. to learn a little bit more about mediumship. And next week, same time, here at Kardec Radio, we will be looking a little bit deeper at mediums, the phenomena of mediums. Today we focused on mediumship. Next week we will look deeper into the actual mediums. Thank you so much, Kardec Radio. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, God, for allowing us to get together. Many blessings. Take care. Bye.